Hello, everyone. Today we're going to talk about the project questionnaire. So this is the questionnaire that was used for a study that was done in 2009, and we know that because the date is on the survey. This survey was done in person, which normally, as you heard in other videos, normally that's not done, but this one was an intercept survey that was done for a town in, I believe, Palm Beach, Florida. So basically they had interviewers that were situated in a town square of sorts, and they stopped people and had them do the survey. That's why it says on-site. So let's go through a couple of the key things about this questionnaire and questionnaires in general. So generally speaking, questionnaires will have the name of the survey at the top. It'll tell you when the date of the survey was done, and the questionnaire will tell you a project number if there is one. When you work for a research company, which is a supplier, they typically give project numbers to studies, and they do that because there might be something of the same name. So say you do a lot of work for a particular company, you wouldn't want to just go by the company's name as a way to find the information on this project, because you may invariably pick up the wrong information. So that's why everything has a project number. So this one has a project number of 2409-2248. I don't know why they have such an elaborate system, but this company's been around a long time. The company is Profile Market Research. So that is the project number. And again, the questionnaire, the survey name is always going to be at the top of the questionnaire, and that's Northwood Village Survey. Now, because this is an on-site survey or an intercept, they do have when the ID is the ID number of the interviewer. Then you have the time started and then time ended. That for some reason that was important. They were going to use that as a variable in their study. It's not usual that you would do that, but there's a reason, I guess, that they wanted to be able to slice and dice the data that way. So the first thing that we should look at is the intro, and all questionnaires will have some sort of intro, because remember, you're calling them or you're introducing yourself in person. You need some sort of script that gets them interested in doing the study. So a typical script will have the name of the research company that's doing it, unless it happens to be the company that's sponsoring the survey is doing all the interviewing in-house. Then this would look a little different, but if a research company is being used, the name of the research company will be stated right up front. Usually you're going to hear something about not selling the information, only interested in their opinions. Interestingly enough, normally this would have something that says your responses will be held confidential. This one does not. So we're not guaranteeing anonymity in this survey. So this one is interesting that we're not doing this. Now, probably they're saying they're not going to be anonymous because they're putting their name in a drawing for a gift basket. So it could be that later they're going to use those names to contact people for some other service or something, Northwood Village anyway. So they're not giving them anonymity in this survey. If they were, it would have to be right up front. So let's go down a little bit and we can talk about some of the survey elements in the questionnaire here. So the first thing you'll see here is an instruction to the interviewer, and we know that it's an instruction because it's all caps, it's in all caps, and it's bolded. So here it's telling the interviewer, if you're interviewing a family, be sure to interview the adult head of household. So again, we know that something is an instruction to the interviewer if it's bolded and all capped, right? Not everything that's bolded will be an instruction, but anything that's in all caps is almost 100% of the time is an instruction for the interviewer. So the first one you'll see here, it's a gender of respondent. This is a nominal question, as we recall from the chapter on questions. It's male versus female, and it's nominal because if you had, a 1 for male and a 2 for female, the 1 and the 2 is meaningless, right? And interestingly enough, there will have to be something for when this gets entered into a system that says what is male and what is female. So this actually will get assigned a number even though it doesn't have a number there. But again, this is a nominal question, and it's a closed-ended question. And we know that because there's nothing to write in, right? If there was a write-in part of it, it would be open-ended. So this is a closed question, and that's gender of respondent. Today's date is open-ended, right, because you have to type something in. The next one, day of the week, that's a closed-ended question because there's no, each of the responses that you could select are there. Okay, so let's keep going down the survey. Question 1, you'll see here that this is actually a screening question. Now, what does that mean? It means that the person has to meet some criteria in order to continue the survey. So we know that this is a screening criteria question because there's a continue and a thank and terminate. That lets us know that it's a screening question. So there's something here that we need to know right up front to make sure that you're qualified to do the survey. So that's what a screening question means. So here it has, so the person has to be 18 years of age or older, and we know that because the continue is next to 18 or older, and then no, under 18 is thank and terminate. Now the thank and terminate, the person doesn't say, thank you, I'm terminating you. They just say, thank you for the study, this quota has been filled, usually is what they'll say, instead of you don't meet the criteria of the survey. That's kind of, could be offensive to somebody. So you just say, thank you very much, the quota for your segment has been filled. Okay. The next one, so again, question 1 is a screening criteria question. So is question 2, which is 2A. Do you work or own property in the Northwood Village area? Okay, so again, this is a screening criteria. We know that because there's a thank and terminate and a continue. Interestingly enough, they don't want people that own property or work at the Northwood Village area to be part of this survey. So let's go down and talk a little bit about some more questions here. Okay, some of them are just, including today, how many times, which this is 2A. There's nothing special about that, but there is something interesting here, and it's going to be part of a skip pattern in a minute. So it says, including today, approximately how many times would you say you have visited Northwood Village? Okay, and you can write in number in 7 days, past 4 weeks, 3 months. And the last thing here is first-time visitor. First-time visitor is going to be important in the next couple of questions. So either you're a first-time visitor or you're not a first-time visitor, and you're not a first-time visitor if you give answers above first-time visitor. So why is that important? Well, first-time visitor are going to get asked some questions that the people that aren't first-time visitors will get asked more questions than those who are first-time visitors. Now, the key here is that there's no skip pattern, there's no screening criteria around whether or not you're a first-time visitor. It doesn't matter if you are or not, but there will be a skip pattern. And the skip pattern is there simply so that we ask the right questions of the particular people. So let's see that in action here. So in the series of question 3, so A, B, C, and D, you'll see that everybody gets asked A, and they're showing them a card. So it could be that, because there's a lot of older people, they have these cards in Florida, but they're showing a card with each of these type of services that are here, and there must be a reason why they're showing them the card rather than just asking them about the individual items. A lot of times on survey, they would have just asked them, what was your main reason for visiting today? They would have just let them tell them, I was going to the flower shop or I was going to the beauty salon. But for some reason, they had a card that they were just showing them, probably the names of the company on the card, just to remind them of everything that's in the village. but everybody gets asked this question. There is a skip pattern instruction at the top, but we'll see in a second. So it says ask all and show card A. Okay, so we're telling the interviewer to show card A, and these questions until you get to another skip pattern informational thing that everybody gets asked. So that's ask all. So everybody gets what is the main reason for visiting today. Everybody gets 3B. Everybody gets 3C, but only the people that have been there before, so not first-time visitor, gets 3D. Okay, and I'm sure you see that in there. So, and it makes sense, right, because it's saying, what have you done in the past? Well, if you're a first-time visitor, you've done nothing in the past there, right? So that is question 3. And again, what I was highlighting there is that there was a skip pattern there for first-time visitor, not first-time visitor. Okay. Now, generally speaking, most of these questions, as I said before, are closed-ended questions, right? You just pick from the list that is there. And sometimes we had some write-ins, like how long, 4B, which is how long did it take to get here today? And you write in the number of minutes. Now, they could have done that as a closed-ended question, too, but they, for some reason, they really wanted the exact number of minutes, which is fine. But you'll see how they can do something as a closed-ended question that could be open is number 6, right? Because it says, including yourself and all members of your party, how much in total will you have spent at Northwood Village during this visit, right? So they could have done that as an open-ended where you just tell me how much you did. But here they're just saying, give me a range. A lot of times you'll use a range for things like income and age, some of the other demographic things. So if you have a concern that someone is not going to answer the question because they don't want to give you the exact amount that they earn or their age or things like that, you give them a range. It's an easier way of getting information from folks where you don't have to have them give you a specific number. Now, you may be wondering, okay, if you give people ranges instead of giving them a write-in, how do you then do an average, right? If you're going to show a mean score or a median score, how do you show an average? Well, a mean score, I'm sorry, not median. If it's a mean score, how do you show an average? And you show an average on a question where you have closed end. You show an average by setting the midpoint for each of the answer categories, all right? So what does that mean? So what that means is in order to do the mean for question 6, where you have a range, you would need to say that the middle between 0 and 10, you have to pick, what you would have to say in the system when you're coding the system, the tables, you would have to give 0 to 10 a score, and you would give that a 5, right? So it's $5 because you're telling what the midpoint is. Same with 10 to 25. So the value of the second answer category is going to be the middle between $10 and $25, which my math brain is not working this morning, but you all can probably figure out what the middle is between $10 and $25. Same goes for 25 to less than 50, 50 to less than 100. So that one I could probably do is 75, right? So the value of that one would be 75. Now, the little tricky part is the 100 or more, right? So what's your endpoint there, or more? Well, that one you would have to decide what would be the upper limit that you would expect someone to pay, or, here it would be spend, right? So you can say, well, someone's probably not going to spend more than, we'll say, $2,000 here. If that's the case, then that would be your upper bound, but that is a subjective, it's subjective, right? So you would have to say, this is what I'm going to decide, and you would have to make sure that whoever was looking at the average for number 6 when you do the detailed tabulations, that that's what the midpoint was there. So you would have to then say, okay, if the end point of the last category is going to be 2,000, then you would then say, okay, what's the midpoint between $100 and $2,000, and that would be the value of this response. And that's how they would do the mean score there. Hopefully that is clear. Question 7 is a completely open-ended question, and you can see there's an instruction to the interviewer, probe in depth. Okay, so basically what they're saying is make sure you're asking additional questions, even though they might not be there. The interviewer is going to say, please be as specific as possible. The probe in depth would probably be things like anything else, you know, anything else. 8A also is a probe in depth, if I could say it, probe in depth. 8B, probe in depth. Okay, so it's just saying what do you like, what do you dislike, how did you hear about us, which is 8C. And then there is a skip pattern in question 8D, which says if you've heard of Art and Wine, which must be one of their events here. Now, you'll see that you only get question 8D, because it's a skip pattern, only get 8D if you said yes to 8C. Now, interestingly enough, the people that were doing this were probably more sophisticated interviewers. Normally, something like this would say something like, if yes in 8C. It doesn't usually say, if heard of Art and Wine, because that makes the person have to read the question before and say, what does that mean, right? So, but this is not a telephone survey. This would be more specifically written if this was a telephone survey, right? Remember, this is an in-depth interview on site in front of the person, so it's probably why the skip pattern is showing this way. But generally speaking, the way it would be programmed, if it was a telephone or internet survey, it would say, if yes in 8C, then ask, okay, 8D. But again, this has a skip pattern, if heard of Art and Wine, okay? And then if ever attended, and that's, again, that's if yes in 8, what was that, 8B? 8C. Oh, I'm sorry, 8D. Yeah, if attended, right? It said 8D was, did you attend? So, again, 8E would say if yes and 8D, ask, right? Question 9 is a scalar question. It is not a Likert question. Okay, we know that it's not a Likert question because it does not have, the answer categories are not all defined. A Likert scale must have every category defined. So this is a 1 to 10 scalar question, okay, and it gave you the endpoints of poor and excellent, but it did not define what a 9 was, an 8, a 7, a 6. A Likert scale can have numbers associated on it, so you could have a Likert scale from 1 to 7, which is typical, or 1 to 5, which is typical, but it would have to tell you what each category means. So what does a 1 mean? So 1 is poor, and then a 2 would say fair, and then a 3 would say neither excellent, or I mean neither good nor bad, or something like that. And then 4 would be good, and then 5 would be excellent, right? So in order for it to be a Likert scale, it would need to have each answer category, it would have to be defined, not by just a number, but also an actual definition of what it means. Hopefully that's clear. Now you'll see that this question has a DK and a ref, okay? DK means don't know, and ref means refusal. Refusal means that the person did not answer that question, okay? Now you'll see most of the time in this survey, they didn't give the ability to do a refusal. They had to answer. But for whatever reason, this one, they decided that they're going to allow them to refuse to answer the question. So question 10, how likely are you to visit? This again is a scalar question, 1 to 10. We have a refusal and a don't know. Now that refuse should be all caps, right, because that's not red. So that was a little error in this survey here, in this questionnaire, but that should always be uppercase. Remember, if it's an instruction to the interviewer, then you need to have it as uppercase. So that ref should have been uppercase. Number 11 has both an open-ended and a closed, it's both open and closed at the same time. And what does that mean? So they have the answer categories that they're allowed to choose from, but they've got this other specify. So this is the, I'm not sure I got all of the important additions listed here. There might be something else that's important to somebody, so I have an other specify. So while this is, generally speaking, it mostly closed-end, this would be considered an open-ended question because it's got the other specify, okay? Now, I don't know why they decided that they needed to say ask all in above question 12 because everybody got 11, but for some reason they wanted to make sure that the interviewer knew that they needed to ask everybody number 12. Okay, and there's that other specify again. So that means that the question really is open-ended because you can put in it's a hybrid question, but it is really open. Now the last thing is questions for classification purposes only. These, generally speaking, are the demographic questions. So they did have one that's not quite demographic, but which is the first one, which is what's your main source of news and information? Yeah, that's about the person, so it's probably a demographic, though it's a little squishy. Generally speaking, the demographic questions will be your independent variables on your detailed tabulations. So when we get to that, you'll see that a lot of the detailed tabulations, the columns, which will be your independent variables, will be based on things like this. So where do you get your news? Are you a year-round or seasonal resident? And are you married? Now, here's an interesting thing with are you married? And we could have done the other one too, but look at question 15. So we've got an instruction here, read list, which is bolded and uppercase, which is good. We know that that means it's an instruction. But down here you've got do not read, and then refused is in lowercase and don't know is in lowercase. That's another way to show it. So you can give the instruction in front of the response. So the instruction to the interviewer is do not read, and you see that's bolded in uppercase. It's not always this way, but it is a way you can show do not, an instruction. So they know that don't read, refused, or don't know to this one. Okay, so again, these are demographic questions that will most likely be independent variables on your detailed tabulations. So you're going to analyze your data by these things. How many children? What's the highest level of education? And again, this could have been a write-in, but this one is an easier one to do it as a closed-ended question. Employment status, what's your occupation? Sometimes that will actually be a list that someone will choose from, but they want a little bit more granularity here, so they're asking them to write it in. Do you own or rent your home, which is question 20. Now, 21, for some reason, they hand the card to respondent. I guess they're a little bit worried about some issue with understanding race. So I'm guessing here that with the race thing, they're just showing them a card and say, okay, which one, is you. So I've never seen that before. It's kind of interesting, but so they want to know if they're white, black, mixed race background, which I've not seen before either, which is kind of funny. Hispanic, Native American. But again, this is just how someone associates themselves. Their zip code, they're probably going to do something with that. Maybe they're going to show, they're going to segment their data by geography, so they need to know the zip code. The age, the income, you see both of these are ranges for the reason I said before. And again, for income, you'll see that they have the F category is 150,000 or more, so you have to decide what the or more, the endpoint will be. At the end here, this one, because they're doing an incentive for this study, remember, right? Well, it did actually say, oh wait, no, it did say at the top. Let me go to the top here. As part of the instructions, it says, if you participate, we'll enter your name into a drawing for a gift basket. Okay, so that was the incentive to do the survey. So this one does have an incentive. Generally speaking, a lot of them do not have incentives. Like if you do a telephone survey or an internet survey, this one does because it's in-person. In-person surveys tend to have some sort of incentive. So in order to put your name in there, we need your name and address and phone number. Now, I have a feeling, as I said right up front, that this one, they want this information because now they're going to bug you, right? Because remember, before they didn't say your response, you're going to be anonymous or your information be held confidential. So so that's the end of the survey for the respondent. But down here, and we always say thank you. Make sure to thank the respondent. We always tell them, the interviewer, to thank the respondent, right? Because you'd hope they would, but they don't always remember. So we just make sure that we tell them to do that. Now, the interesting thing here is, as we know, there are some intentional interviewer biases. So here, this is a way to combat an intentional interviewer bias. And this is to say, I certify in writing that I did this. I had the person do the survey. There was a live person that I interviewed. It was a real person that I interviewed, and I make sure that that it was that the stuff was recorded correctly, and that I'm not going to tell anybody about this person's responses. Not that I can't imagine why they would, but perhaps they knew the person. It could be. And that may be why that this person, why they have this in there, maybe that the interviewers are people that live in the area and may know the people that got interviewed. So that's why they're saying that you're certifying as an interviewer that you're not going to give out any information about the people that you interviewed. So hopefully this was helpful. This is the questionnaire for the project. The next video will be about the detailed tabulations that go with this questionnaire. Have a great day.